you to be able to be with you in person and not to belabor the point, but my knee's fine. And I'm just looking forward to being able to support this team and do the work, the important work that we have in front of us. Because as we all know, recent events have really, if we weren't heightened, if we were not on watch and concerned before, I think if recent events have not reinforced that or brought it to your attention, I don't know what will. And sometimes we make the mistake in Delaware because we say, well, those things are happening on a national scale. Well, it's funny, when I was driving down this morning, I started thinking, we are going to have a new governor. We're going to have a new United States Senator, a new member of Congress. Those of us who live in Newcastle County, we're going to have potentially a new county executive. We will have a new county executive, excuse me, a new Newcastle County president. And I'm not familiar with what's going to go on in Kent, Sussex, but I'm sure there's going to be similar changes. And it just means, besides the obvious that we got to get out and vote, we got to get activated, but we have to, this particular committee has to really find its niche and find the way that we can work more effectively so that we do more. And I love everybody, it's great seeing everybody in person, that we do more than meet, talk, and then go back, and then come back a month, 2 months later, meet, talk, and then no reflection on any of us, lack of action. We absolutely have to figure out what we can do, what our parameters are, what we can and cannot do, and then understand that we are a volunteer organization by and large, and then figure out what is our best way that we can make a difference. Because I know our heart's in the right place, I know we want to, but I think if we were all being honest and assess where we are, we haven't established the traction and the impact that I think that all of us would like to see. And more importantly, we all know that needs to happen. So today's meeting is going to be focusing on how can we do a reboot? How can we get a sense of the work that we need to do? And I think it's important that we figure out what the work that we can do amongst ourselves, and we get a sense of what that looks like. And yes, I remember we all got the early information about the work ahead of us and how this body was established, and that's a great starting point. But we got to figure out what that means. And if we don't have a common understanding here, then we're not going to be able to do the work. And then we're also not going to be able to do something that we need to do, is we got to expand our capacity. We cannot do it alone. We have to. Everyone around this room and on the calls, I know one of the things that we all have in common is we all have a network, because we all are people that are doing good work in our respective communities and or our careers. So we got a network. We got to tap into that. And I'll use myself as an example. There's no reason why I can't tap into my 40 years of service in the education field and identify people up and down the state that can be part of the education committee. It's got to happen. And I know that needs to happen in all the areas. And that doesn't mean that they have to be a member of this group. All we want are people who have an interest in what we're trying to do, can bring some expertise, perspective, positions to the table, so that when we start to develop things, we're not doing it in a small silo, we're doing it in a much broader base. And we're having those important conversations where people agree and sometimes they disagree, but then you end up getting on the right place. So that we need to do that in all our respective areas. And leaving today, we need to have an understanding of what reboot means for us, what it means, what we're going to do, and in fairness, and so I'm just speaking to a family here, So we don't, our staff is wonderful, but guess what? It's only a few. So we have to, deal with that. And also, maybe part of what we have to do as a committee, and I'm just speaking as a member of this, maybe we have to advocate for more help. Because if people have certain expectations for us, and we would be fine with that, but guess what? We need the capacity, we need the support, our staff needs that, so that we can do the work that needs to be done. So, I'm not gonna be a Baptist preacher, even though once upon a time I thought it was. But, sometimes, in life, you just have those aha moments. And for me, starting with, and I know I shouldn't be political, but I'm gonna be anyway. I have so much respect for President Biden, and watching him just struggle, and just watching that, and then watching over the last few weeks how people were disrespectful, and that just reminded me of people in our society are bent on what have you done for me now, as opposed to what have we done for you historically. So for me, that was the wake up call that we got to do some different things here. And y'all might, if y'all disagree, I respectfully would appreciate that and would listen to that. But I just came this morning saying, we got a lot of people here who really are committed to RSC. And so we gotta get this thing revved up and figure out what that looks like for us. And last but not least, because I'm not drinking violent, and if there are people out in the world who don't like what we're doing, and what they need to do is they need to be more specific. Speak up and let us know what their expectations are. Because in the meantime, without having those expectations spelled out for us, we're all very smart in this room, and we can figure out a path. So until notified differently, I think that's what we need to do. So right now, the floor is yours.
I have a question. So has anybody let you know that they're not pleased with what?
No,
Okay.
not me, and or Jane, I speak for Jane. We've had not had any conversation. Only conversations I have with people like connected, with REC, are all of you and our wonderful executive director and Mike, and of course Jane, but no one else. And I'm fine with that. I'm gonna be honest, I can't speak for y'all, but I said, I'm fine with that because I know I have a lot of confidence in us and once I concede, I have a lot of confidence in myself as well, that we can figure out what to do. But we have to figure out what that looks like and what a clearinghouse approach means. Yes, sir.
Do we have a vision statement and a mission statement? If we do, are we tracking that vision and mission statement? Because I think that would help be a motivating factor. Because you said something I like. You said advocate for more help, need that capacity. Then you also spelled out an action plan. And to do that, you use another key word. I was talking to Nana about that, network. Because my thing, and you ask me all the time, I say your network is your net worth. So that's a network. And you said here, each of us have a network. And I heard you say with the numerous number of years of experience you had, to be able to reach out to those people, to bring some of those people into this forum.
Exactly. So let me respond to it. So, yeah, it's a great point. So I thought it would be kind of premature, because everything you just stated are thoughts that I have in mind. But I did not want to come, because we are a team, we're a body.
Yes, sir.
And no one member, including me, has any more influence than anyone else. So if what you say is something we want to do and something that I'm in line with, and if we decide to do that as a body, then we can establish the action plan, the mission statement, and emphasize networking and also how we're going to function. those are things that I would like to see come out of the conversation today. And then for us to be able to charge our staff with developing those things and bringing them back. Because I think what we have to do is, for lack of a better word, this is a restart. Forget about what we did, what we didn't do, all that stuff, you can't. One of the things that you can control is you can control the future, you can't control the past. At least in my mind. And so we can control the future. And I just know from my interactions with everyone here, especially when I was able to interact with everyone in person, I just know everybody has the same passion for me. I know I got it. I know y'all have it too. Let me rephrase that. We have it. We just have to figure out what that looks like. So, I've been doing a lot of talking. I would really like to listen and hear. Your points were great, and see how we can leave today with a better understanding of the work, how we're going to function, and just, for lack of a better term, being the new way I am, have a roadmap.
If I may.
Yes. Yes.
There was not an actual, there was a discussion that someone thought that the Racial Equity Consortium should be a think tank, a policy think tank. We had not received those instructions until about maybe a month and a half ago. So we were operating on a different lens. So, but now that we know that it should be a policy think tank, or the idea of a policy think tank, the thought is to do dual track, focus on policy, legislation, identifying gaps and barriers, and also do educational and advocacy programming to assist those who may not know about racial equity issues, get our students involved, as we know, once you get involved in advocacy, you stay involved your entire life. So get them engaged early. So that is our thoughts going forward. So we did have a kind of a roadmap and a goal because of the legislation when it says we are to address inequities of people of color in the state of Delaware. So we have an overarching theme, and then we subdivided the issues into those 6 main areas. So we do have the subcommittees in which we can focus on, and those recommendations in which we're going to look at. So during our subcommittee meeting, we went over the recommendations, where we are now, the status of those recommendations, and going forward, how we can address and make sure that we are hitting those benchmarks, and then coming up with new ideas that we need to talk about. So that's where the landscape is, and that's where the bulk of the discussion for today would be about. What do we see happening in the future, and how we can be intentional and strategic in our role as the Racial Equity Consortium.
And so the important question for us would be, so what does that mean for us? So a key piece in terms of a structural way to deliver this process would be, so we're still going to keep this meeting format. Okay, so we're still going to do that. But a different twist is going to be, there has to be more emphasis or more scaffolding at the subcommittee level. So for instance, if all our committees were up and running, what would be a standard agenda item would be, I'll use myself as an example. So the education committee could really share from the time that we met last as a large body to the time that we were doing work in our subcommittee. What are the deliverables that we bring to the table? What has happened? What has transpired? And more importantly, to bring it back here and to make sure that this larger body sanctions that, because no subcommittee can run without getting the reinforcement of the body here. So that's a key difference. That's why the committee structure is so imperative to our work. And I know Jay and I, this is the world that we live in. I know other people are familiar with it too, but that's the way we operate in NAACP. You have the larger bodies, you have your subcommittees, And the lion's share of the work is done at the subcommittee level, and it comes back, and it comes back for sharing, but also for approval. Because, for example, if the education committee was going left and we wanted to go right, the way that things are calibrated would be right here. We say, that's really nice, but right now, that's not what we want to do. So really, we serve as oversight and a steering mechanism, and we're going to help to shape the way we work. But from a capacity standpoint, important work can't happen here, has to happen in the subcommittee. And somebody had to hand up.
So, I had a kind of a question on what the Racial Equity Consortium does, maybe in tandem with the Delaware General Assembly. If people in subcommittees sit down during certain like meetings, not necessarily meetings, but I do know that I interned with Delaware Racial Justice Collaborative, and there was an instance where there was a policy that we were trying to basically ensure that the General Assembly knew that we had we were back. So that policy was based off of like essentially like doulas in Delaware, like making that more like insurance friendly. And so one of the things I did is during that meeting, I called in and I just read a statement basically putting support of that. So I guess my question is, does REC do anything currently with like the Delaware General Assembly to basically say that these are policies that we are interested in?
You know, we do, but I think what you are articulating is a more formalized approach.
Yes.
And so let's take it a step further. So what you just talked about is a great way. Now, the difference I would add to it would be that as a member of REC, for you to be able to speak formally for us, you would have to run that by this group, and this group would have to say, well, Freeman, this is a position we'd like for you to, that is our position, and you can articulate it within the group. And the great thing about that is that, first of all, it's consistent, we're on the same page, and you again, the blessing and curse of Delaware. Delaware is small enough that people are all going to know who we are, and some people who aren't maybe fans of the REC may try claims. Whereas if we all are on the same page, whether it's somebody talking to me in Newcastle, somebody talking to somebody in Kent, whatever, we're on the same page. And that's where we get. But your example is a great one, that we do have to reach out to stakeholders. And part of what I envision as our stakeholder group, obviously, are members of the General Assembly. I know, for example, in NAACP, and NAM does it as well, I do that all the time. I talk to all of our local reps all the time. But the thing that I do, and I'm just, if you haven't figured this out about me, I'm very anal. The thing that I do when I talk to any of those politicians is that I already have permission from my executive committee to talk about these things. So no one should say, well, this is the way Freeman sees it. No, this is the way that the group that I'm representing sees it. And that's huge, because I'm just telling you from years of experience, I know folks like to play each other against each other. And the best way that you can nip that in the bud is that we have our statement, our official positions that we voted on, it's in the record, and then therefore it can be something that can be articulated. So those are the kinds of things that we can do to help us. But it still boils down to the fact that we just have to strengthen our committee system, reinforce that that's where the work is done. And this is where, for us, another way to look at it, this is where the governance happens. Because we're really a governance body for this group.
One of the things I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That in our discussion when we had the meeting, I went back and I looked at the mandate that came along with the formation of this group. And the one thing that even with the economic opportunity, the health and welfare, safety and justice and infrastructure and environment, that we were supposed to study, which means that we're supposed to be hearing from, and the only one that we've really heard for was housing.
Yep.
But we're supposed to study and know what's going on in the Department of Corrections, what's going on in the communities and in the areas of economic development, so that we can say, but go back to our legislators and say, here's an area that should have been changed,
Yeah.
but has not been changed.
Yeah.
Even though the recommendation has, and the mandate has been, been completed, we still are lacking in this particular area.
Yeah.
So as part of the committee and with our rebooting, we need to be talking to some of these, organizations.
Yep,
The
yep.
Department of Corrections, and I keep going because we have so many.
No, and you're gonna have to point, and I'll let you speak, and then I'll follow after you.
But that's where I think that the focus and how we need to go, because if we're not knowing, if we don't have any idea of what's happening outside of these four walls, then there's not the ability to recommend and make changes are very limited.
Yep.
And even when we're meeting with our subcommittees, if I don't have anyone, if we haven't met with anyone from, economic development as to the barriers that they're facing and things of that nature, then how can we make recommendations as to what needs to be changed? I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that, because I was gonna ask what are the subcommittees, and I was doing a little bit of reading about CREC, and when Cassandra invited me to come to the subcommittee. So I'm a regional manager for probation and parole, so I've been with DOC for 28 years. But one of my other interests outside of that is actual research. So I've seen that there was a component possibly to actually start to understand where those gaps are for research. So I was just asking, like, what are the subcommittees? And the purpose, like, what is the outcomes that the subcommittees are looking for?
Okay. Okay. Maybe if we just go through the list of subcommittees. Please.
Absolutely. So the subcommittees are education, health and welfare, safety and justice. I'm sorry, I'm talking too fast. Education, safety and justice, health and welfare, infrastructure and environment, housing, economic development.
Those are it. Right. And a key piece, I think, for us, if we think about it in this context, think about that we're going to be reaching out to subject experts. And that we also need to establish a cadre of our own experts, so that again, it's not that I'm not trusting, but I think we need to, maybe there's some areas that we want to specifically hone in on, and maybe we can have some folks to work on those topics for us, and that's why, as I stated in my long rambling conversation, it's about capacity. Because as sure as we're sitting here, it's not if, we do have to have it. And that'll be the kind of conversation that if we vote on it, if we get to direction from this body, Jane and I can go to the appropriate powers to be and say, hey, we're involved in this, and we have a very active committee, and we have subcommittees that are working, but we also need to enhance our staff support. Because, if we're gonna do this and we're gonna do it right, that needs to happen. And if the answer is that they're not willing to do that, then what we would do is come back to this body and scale down our effort. Because the bottom line is this: whatever we do, we're gonna do it right. So if we have the parameters that can be broadened, that's great. If we have to have parameters that are not as broad, then we're still gonna do high quality. And so, but those kinds of things will not be decided by Jane or by me. We will bring them back to the body, and everything that we do will always be voted on by this body in terms of direction for what we need to do. For instance, if somebody said, well, you need to have on behalf of REC, we need to meet with the governor. Well, that would be something that I wouldn't take it upon myself. I would bring that topic here and then get your endorsement. And then if you said yes, then Ken and I would do that, or whoever it is, as an example. But I think we have to have that structure where no one, we're all on the same page, and we're all making decisions here on how we're gonna run and how we're gonna do this thing.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Wally, last time we were talking, he chimed in with me, and he says, take small steps. Remember, we had five committees, or we had those committees. He said, what we're gonna do is just because of capacity. So you hit it so well. He said, take the small steps and prioritize. Take something in there and look at those committees. And then Ms. Jamie said, take a look at those committees, and we can take it from there and work on those committees, and then begin to expand ourselves. Because then the data will prove us, and will tell us where we are. And if I may say, sir, try to stop talking, I'll be moving. What we would like to do is each meeting would look at your production. In other words, you know, every time we come to a meeting, we should be moving forward somewhere. So we should see some progression, right? And the data would drive us and tell us, as you said, Mr. Chair, where we're at. And then exposure is one thing we truly need. That's why I stay in the community continually. I'm with the governor now, working with the lieutenant governor. Stay in the community. We need positions, and we need voice. So I heard you say it right there. You said, well, I come back to the body, and I speak with the body, because that person out there, like Nana would have been, you become a voice in legislative body.
And the other thing too here, I mean, again, because I look at us as a governance body here, and so it's okay if X committee didn't meet, and they come to the meeting and say to us, we didn't meet, but we're going to meet such and such, and we're going to do that, as opposed to, I don't know, you know, so really at each of these meetings, any of the committees that are up and functional should be able to give us an update, whatever it is, you know, whatever it is, and yes, it's part of having that work validated, but it's also an informative process for us. And you bring a great point, because what Wally said, I think, I mean, I endorse that concept that, so Rome wasn't built in a day. So maybe what we decide is that, okay, based on the composition of our committees, we have these committees that are structured and are ready. They're not ready to go. But if we have 3 as opposed to 6, we run with 3, or we run with the 2, and we bring that, because it's about not being able to say to people, oh, we have 6 committees. Well, we have 2 committees that are making a tremendous impact in what we're doing. And see, for us, it's about the work. It's not about numbers. It's not about them. So I just, you know, feel that that's how we need to operate. And as the chair and co-chair, we're ready to roll. Yes, ma'am.
A question I guess I have is, as we start thinking more about that research aspect, almost like what are the expectations of research in itself? Because research can be defined as a lot of various different things. Where you get your sources are also very, very, and I think wondering with the committees or having that conversation of like, whether it's like a head researcher or something, some type of rotating aspect of somebody's in charge of doing this part of research.
Right. But you're bringing out a great point. If we had the staff and capacity, absolutely to do that. And so, you know, the way I try to segment stuff, I see that down the road exactly how you just articulate that. However, we got to deal with the here and now. The here and now may be this. We may, and this, please don't, it's just in stone. We may say, guess what? We may identify 2 committees that we want to rock and roll with for now. And that we, they have the participation at the subcommittee level, they've identified some things, and that we sanction that's the approach we want to take. And then as this process moves forward, maybe we have another committee or 2 or whatever. We can do this in an incremental way. But what we have to do is make sure that we have certain guidelines for what we want to see happen in community level. Like, for example, you can't have just 2 people. I mean, no disrespect, but that's not, you know, and so maybe there's a numerical number, I don't know, but more importantly, we have a wide range of people that are on the committee that represent upstate, downstate, all the different components that we have to. So there's we have no flaws in our process. But again, it's gonna be our job here to decide how that works. So I know I'm rolling a lot of stuff out at you, and it's different, but for us to work, this is how we can do it. And for us to have the maximum control over the work, for us. And not say to ourselves, oh, we gotta wait for somebody else. No, we don't. We have to roll up our sleeves, use our expertise and our experiences, and decide how we're going to maximize this effort with our current capacity limitations. All right?
Doctor,
Yes.
where's the gentleman over
And
there?
please call me Freeman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Yeah, that's right. Mr. Freeman, please. Who's the gentleman with the videos? We did a video presentation we were doing for the REC committee. Yeah, the gentleman with, shit, what's his name? Jordan. Right, where are we with that right there as far as, production, as far as reaching out, using that, internet, and using the other areas to, let people know? Because what we really need is that voice again and presence. People need to really know what REC is, what we truly stand for. And when they do that, that's when the fire catches on.
Right.
I can answer that. So Jordan, Michael Pierce here for the record. Jordan is working on Lisa Blunt Rochester's campaign team. So he's been active with that while still pushing REC. We have students, of course, they're on break for the summer, but they're still advocating as well. Anaya Pierce, who she started at Westchester with her master's, she's been advocating down there as well. So even though our students are on break, and honestly they're not even working, they're still advocating. But on the social media platform, we're being active there. However, we're kind of at a standstill because outside of, it's really just a sewer line now. And we're waiting for the students to come back and also for resources to be available to be able to hire students to be able to do the work. So we're doing what we can, amongst the two of us.
And you open up a real interesting opportunity for us, because part of the rebuilding allows us to also repackage ourselves in the sense of that we are statewide. So everything that we do has to fit into that category. So that's kind of rethinking for how we want to really communicate what we're doing and making sure. And I've said it a couple times: upstate, downstate, counties, whatever. And I'm not being really purposeful in doing so, because we have to make sure that people realize that it's not a Newcastle thing, it's not a Kent thing, it's not a Sussex thing, it's a Delaware thing. And again, those of us who've been around Delaware for a while, we gotta be sensitive to that, because if we don't roll it out the right way, we'll give some people some excuses to not be accepting of excuses. So anyway, if you can't tell, I've been doing a lot of things.
I agree with everything you have said wholeheartedly. One of the things that I would like to see when we move forward in the beginning of the year is more consistency with our voting members being present. I know that we all have very challenging schedules, but I feel like that we can move the needle with those present more consistently as well.
I agree 100%, because technically, as we speak right now, let's see, Wally, what do we have? We're up to what, 4 voting members? 4 voting members.
So just like we're.
Yeah, excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
And your input is greatly appreciated, but your point's well taken. So when we're taking official action, then the voting members have to be there. So it really becomes the charge of saying because there are all these different groups, and I'll pick on NAACP because that's where we belong. So I don't look like I'm picking on any groups. So we reached out to the representative on NAACP, or actually, the director did a number of times, and it was determined that our president was not available to serve. So we picked somebody up. I mean, it's not that difficult to do if you want to do it. So your point's well taken, and part of our efforts as we move forward is that we're going to have to ask, because that's out of control, because that was those positions and how they were set up, that was all done by legislation. So we can't say you've lost your voting card. But what we can say is you need to send a representative. And you get to decide, that's your house, you decide who wants to represent you or whatever, but in fairness to the self, you don't, you cannot have it done. Because what I think we're gonna do is we're gonna be a little bit more assertive. And if there's a pattern, then we're gonna move that up the food chain and let people, the higher end of the food chain, let them decide how they're gonna deal with it.
Sir, may I ask you, where are we at with forums? And Ms. Jane, I heard you talk about them a lot of times throughout the state of Delaware. There's different forums that come up, legislative forums, other forums. What I'm looking at, President, I'm looking at structure, but I'm also looking at voice and presence. When your voice and presence is there,
Right.
people tend to take a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Because I told the lieutenant governor, she's running now, I said, your greatest gift is community, community, community. She said, I never thought about that. Because everything else is relevant to a certain extent, but it's presence.
Right.
Because people want to see a person not just in front of the button. I want to see the person behind the button, but I want to see the person FaceTime. I don't want to just see them, well, I push the button and I elected you, there you are. No, I want to see the working person. So how do we do that? Can we invite people here? So some of your forums?
Yep, so that's item number 9.
I'm sorry.
No, that's item number 9. So actually, going through my list, so I didn't look at most of them. So the thing that you brought up is great. And as I said before, once we get a system in place, and it's easy to do, that we would say, the following events are going on over the next couple of months. Who has the schedule and the availability to represent us? Because it can't be Jane and me, because it's just not correct. Because there's too many, first of all, there are too many things going on at the same time in a lot of cases.
Yes, sir.
Including, especially if you talk about on the weekend. There can be 5 or 6 things going on at once at the same time. And so that'll allow us to be strategic and for us to figure out what event would serve us best to attend. Because there could be things that are going on, but maybe at this time and place, it may not be the best utilization of our attendance here. So again, we will decide here, we'll put that on as an item on the agenda, and we'll decide, and the information, we'll get it out to everybody in advance, so everybody can come prepared, not to read, but to vote and do what we need to do. So really, it's changing the way that we utilize this time, but it's also making sure that we use the time in between meetings in a more effective manner. And again, I'll call this the Wally method. I wholeheartedly endorse us deciding what committees we want to officially sanction to be up and running. We got 6 or 8. And all 8 can't, based on our capacity, all 8 can't be functional. Now, there are 2 or 3 can, in my humble opinion, and we need to identify what they are, and then empower the chair of those committees to rock and roll and give them all the support that they need. So again, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to be quiet.
Well, there were several people who were asked to be a part. I don't know if the invitation was extended to them or whether someone just appointed them to be a part. And I praise God for everybody that's here. But the fact of the matter is, in order for us to accomplish what needs to be accomplished, those individuals who were selected to be a part of this task force need to be present. And as you just said, if they can't be present, then they should appoint somebody.
Exactly.
Because of the fact we are few in numbers and there's much to be done. And you cannot expect the few to take care of the monumental task that is before us. And things that we see going on within the state of Delaware, I'm just speaking about the state of Delaware, requires those people who are in authority and who are in charge of some of these departments to be a part of this.
Because if we're serious about the work, people have to show up. I mean, everybody's time, here we are, it's too, all of us could be doing something else.
Yes,
But we're serious, but we're engaged in the work.
But in terms of you mentioned the guidelines. What happens if you have the people who are voting members and should be here, they don't send a representative, they don't respond back, then what do we do then?
Well, then that's when, this is Jane's opinion, that they need to be replaced. If you don't wanna be a part, just speak up and say,
Yep.
I don't care to be
Yep,
a
yep,
part.
yep.
So then we can put somebody else in your place.
Yep.
We can select someone else who would probably be, very effective.
Mm.
And so, I know that there were people that said, well, this person needs to be, but if that person chooses not to be, then we're spinning our wheels by continuously sending them correspondence and asking them to attend, and they don't attend.
Yeah. And I mean, don't be more direct. If there's a real pattern, I mean, I have a problem calling go. Look, here's the deal.
Say so.
Here it is, here's the deal. This is X, Y, Z. These are important areas. Now, our staff, we reached out and we've sent it to the appropriate person. We've worked through all the appropriate protocols and we've been responsive to the pecking order. They're not responding. So here's what we're telling you. So what do you want me to do? If you give our committee, not me, we can find some people. And we can move on and we can stop spinning our wheels with whatever that is and find somebody who's comparable, who wants to attend and wants to be engaged in this process. And more importantly, it has the voting privilege to be a part of it. So that's the key. I mean, you can come and you whatever, but when we're talking about the way we're structuring things as we move forward, everything that we do is going to be voted on. So if you're not a non-voting member, that's not, but if you come, so that's the conversation that Jane and I have to have on behalf of this committee to advocate for how we move forward. Yes. Anybody have a hand up? Anybody?
The last time I do. No,
It's not the last time.
I'm sorry. I hope everybody really hear this. My director over there now is working on a program called Navigating Generational Differences. If you have not had it, if you have not trained on it, at your level of BSU and other places they are. We're looking at generations here, okay? 5 generations or thereabouts. So we're talking about the committees. You got traditionalists, you have baby boomers, you got Gen Xers, you got millennial Ys, you got Zs. Everybody's attribute and learning techniques and strategies are different. That could be a proponent or a problem why we're having this collision. That's right. It could get better, right? Because we all have different structured values, right? And we want to bring them into this process to make it much more meaningful, right? But a lot of people, we don't know how to approach it. So maybe we ought to sit down and kind of these tentacles and look at how we approach our people and how we begin to bring them in and look at those strengths and values that they bring from their generations.
And I would agree with you there too. And I see that more of a function at the committee level.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because here we have, I mean, again, and please push back on me if you don't agree, but I see, I'm just talking to the whole group collectively. I see our functioning more in a governance, oversight, we come, whatever, and we help to kind of steer the ship to make sure that everybody's heading in the right direction. And if if a committee or if the chair is headed in a direction that's a little different, things can be recalibrated. I see that's huge. So you're absolutely right. When I think about stakeholders, I look at it as a rainbow coalition of people, age, all the different subgroups and whatever to be on a group, because you need that. But in terms of us, I just think that what we're talking about and what we're going to put in place is going to give us the structure. It's going to give us the focus, and it's going to allow us to hit the ground running to get some things done. And then after we accomplish some more things, then we can go to the table and I won't have my cane then, but I can hit on the table on behalf of all of us, and we can say, hey, powers to be, we need more capacity. Look at what we're doing.
Yes.
We're just not, spinning our wheels, and we're doing some really, really great work. But oh, by the way, this is just tip of the iceberg. And clearly, if anybody thinks that more work is not necessary, I don't know what rock have you been living on recently?
If I may,
Thank you.
to kind of crystallize what we've said or summarize what the action steps going forward. The biannual report is due to the governor and members of the General Assembly in August. So we have a draft that will kind of outline where we are now, what has been taking place this past 18 months, the status of the recommendations from the African American Task Force, and what are some of the future things going forward. That draft will be sent to all members who are present or who have been involved in the Racial Equity Consortium for comment. And we have a month to really look at it and be critical. Michael and I are working on a draft, what we think it should look like. I can tell you now, I have never given a full report to the governor, so I don't know how it's supposed to look. So it's just our idea of how it's supposed to look. So he won't be mad, neither will I, if someone says, this is horrible, change this page to this page. We want that type of feedback so that we're putting our best foot forward to the governor. And it will give us also a starting point to what we should do starting from September through December. I would like to see the Racial Equity Consortium to be positioned to work with the General Assembly in January when they start the new session. That is what I'm hoping that this end of summer, fall time will allow us to do, working with the subcommittees, be, again, very intentional of what we need to do. At our last subcommittee meeting on June 25th, I believe we had a great conversation with each of the subcommittee meetings. We talked about where we are now, what we're doing going forward, and we even had, out of the 6 subcommittees, 3 subcommittees, we have volunteers, someone who served as the chair of that subcommittee. So I think we are moving in a direction that's going to be positive, but as with the chairman said, that we need to make sure that everyone who wants to be a part are a part and they're doing it. And as you all know, this is a volunteer organization. And if you don't want to do something, you're not going to do something, whether we have a passion for it or not. We need to have the capacity, the time. And that's why we try to make the schedule. Every other 4th Tuesday of the month, it's on your schedule to put it on there, make it a priority. But for whatever reason you can't, I don't think we are going to hold anyone to their membership. If, for example, like the NAACP did, they appointed someone else to be a part of it, and she's on the phone now, then we should do that for the other members as well. So going forward, I think we have a plan in place. We will definitely figure out a structure, governance, I guess bylaws is something that needs to come up with.
Yes.
I'm sighing because there's one more thing on my plate, but it'll happen. We will do it.
We're gonna get that grass too, we're gonna get that grass too.
And we will get that done. So what are your other thoughts? I'm just making sure that we're on the right direction.
Yeah, and we haven't heard from any of our people on.
I was wondering why no one spoke from.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing. Yeah,
I mean, right there.
yeah,
How unusual.
I think everyone's just trying to listen and take it in.
Right.
yeah,
That's important.
yeah. Comments, we,
And you'll miss it. Wow.
I guess they have nothing to say.
You're on mute.
well,
You're big.
But their lips aren't moving.
Rob's gonna get someone else an opportunity first.
yeah.
Right, right.
That's not like you.
Mr. Willie, you're on mute, and he's talking.
Mr. Scott, you did it.
There you go. You know,
There's no volume whatsoever.
Yeah.
1 second.
Okay. We okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Just one thought to add on to Sue's comments. I think the other thing that would be helpful is as granular as we can be around, what's expected in terms of deliverables and, the timelines associated with those deliverables would be helpful for each one of the subcommittees as well. So I think there needs to be clarity as to, what really are the expectations of the subcommittees and, what's the timeline around when those things need to be in place. So that, we've got that level of structure to work from so that everybody's on the same page around what we're doing, why we're doing it, and when it needs to be done. And I think as clear as we can be about, like I said, those deliverables and the timelines, the more successful we could be.
Right, right. And I think the report out system is going to be helpful as that as well, to make sure that people know that, I think all of us, it goes back to that old homework theory, if you know you got homework, you know there's a deadline.
Right.
It's going to be that tendency for you to, at least for me, to try to make sure I'm prepared. So I think that'd be a good.
And I think the report also be helpful because it will provide some maybe some further calibration or clarification as to whether or not we're in the right place or, here's some adjustments that need to be made or whatever. So I think those two things kind of overlap. But again, I think as granular as we can be around, what's expected from the subcommittees and by when the more successful we'll be.
Good. Thank you for your comments. Corey?
Good morning, everyone. You all know that I always have something to say, so where to begin? So I'm going to start with just my first of all, my gratitude for our chairs in terms of their leadership and their continued commitment to ensuring that we're looking at what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it so that we can be effective at what we're doing and what our charge is. So I want to thank them for that. That's the large concepts we talked about, everything to the room that we're in today, right? To make sure that, and I can say as someone who's participating virtually, the audibility is much better. Looks like Mr. Scott agrees as well. So that's already a step in the right direction. I think I want to just focus my comments on the sort of participation aspect and the dynamics that I've observed amongst those who've been assigned to participate. I am of the opinion that those who are here have demonstrated that they're committed to being involved, and that's all we need. I don't think that our energy is best spent worrying too much about who's not in the room per se. I think that we move forward with who's in the room, and to the extent we need to bring in expertise, we convene them, because as this body, as a body created by state law, we have the authority to convene. So if someone is not here, we don't necessarily need their voluntary participation, but we convene them respectfully for a topic that is necessary to our business. So that's the way I would recommend we proceed if folks are not engaging with the work for whatever reason, right? And they're perfectly legitimate reasons that people may have. And I would say, related to that, I've been a part of organizations where there is an attendance policy, and it might seem rudimentary. And again, as a busy professional, I appreciate people's busyness, but I think that if you don't attend a certain amount of meetings or don't telegraph, we require that of our young people to indicate if they're going to be out or even with most work. So I think that that's not a stretch too far to ask people if you can't be present to reflect that. I don't think engagement or lack of any type of communication is fair to the chairs or fair to the work. So I think whether it's part of some bylaws or even just, something less formal that we vote on amongst the voting, if we have a quorum today, we consider, saying, look, there's we have, so I think you said we meet 6 times a year. We meet every other month.
Yes.
If you 6 meetings, and if you miss 2 of them without indicating, maybe that's, cause for, some type of corrective action. Again, I won't go too far ahead of myself. I'm fashioning this in real time, but something to set expectations for people about, you know, what the consequence of lack of engagement may be. But again, I don't want to get lost in that too much, because I go back to my original point, which I think that regardless, you know, we move forward with what we're doing. And again, if expertise is not present that we need, we call it into the room, we convene it. I think we have that power, and we should wield that to let people know that, you know, that's a thing. The last thing I'll say is I do think that it's really important for us to work backwards. I think Mr. Scott sort of alluded to it, where we are thinking very carefully about where we want to be, and then working backwards from that so that our steps are carefully planned. I think that, you know, the more that we focus on where we want to end up, the better we can be effective about how we spend our time in between. And I think that goes as to the broader structure, and with respect to the committees. I think because the committees are a subcommittee structure, we got a lot of direction today, which I think is wonderful. They're going to need even more direction to be able to know what it is that they are charged to do, how they're charged to do it, so that they can be focused when those meetings happened and directed to productivity, right, towards something that is helpful. So those are my main thoughts. Of course, I have others, but I'm not going to consume the time we have. I'm going to be sure to share that with the chairs. And but I think that those are sort of my primary points I want to give a feedback. But I think this is a great encouraging forward motion that we're having with this discussion.
Good, good. Thank you as always, Wally, for your comments. Corey, sir.
So good morning, you guys. I do want to. Good morning. I do want to. Everything. I agree with everything Mr. Rushton talked about, and Mr. Scott, for that matter. And you know, just listening to the concerns of this body around participation, around you know, the newly volunteered chairs of subcommittees. I have volunteered for the Safety and Justice Subcommittee, and you know, just thinking about, you know, my role in that and how we need to charge forward with, you know, safety and justice, DOC, reentry, safer communities, and things of that nature. So just turning my brain around, you know, how to effectively move our mission forward with respects to the Safety and Justice Subcommittee, and getting dates down, and thinking about people in the community who would thrive and add value to that subcommittee. I think Wally reiterated it perfectly. Like, we don't need, if the people aren't showing up, we make them show up, right? We voluntold them to show up and present, and present on the information we need to move our mission forward. I love that idea, and I think we have the credibility to do so. So just really listening. I am nursing a ruptured Achilles, and had surgery last week, so I'm still kind of medicated.
Would you like Cane?
It's the second one in 2 years, you guys. So it's mentally draining, I tell you. But so I'm just the beginning stages of this recovery period. And so, you know, I made it my business and try to make it my business to show up, whether it's virtually or in person, every time, because I think it's important. And so that's all I really got. Just really getting the subcommittee down. We have a few members of the subcommittee available today, and just trying to figure out who should be there, and figure out how we move forward with the charge.
Sounds like a great plan, and we wish you nothing but the best in your recovery.
Thank you.
Okay. Caitlin? There she is.
Hi, sorry, I have a bunch of stuff going on with my kid today, so I've I have not been paying 100% attention during this meeting. I apologize. My kid has lice and trying to deal with that and find a new daycare. And anyways, is there a question I'm supposed to be answering?
No, we just wanted to hear some of your thoughts, what we discussed today. Any input you might have.
Yeah, sorry, I just don't have anything to offer today. I'm on mom duty right
Sure,
now.
sure.
I'm sorry.
No, and that's more important, so we understand that, and we know you know.
Can you hear?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yes. Dr. Hubbard, go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, and my apologies. I'm driving, so it's a little bit hard to hear. I believe I missed my subcommittee meeting and the last meeting. I think the one thing I would appreciate is getting if we could narrow our focus a bit. I feel in some respects we're trying to boil the ocean, and it's just very, very difficult. And it would be great to have some specific areas to work on. Like, for example, I know we've got the original task force recommendations. I was on the task force. I still feel like there's some loose ends there. I believe that we need to look at that and decide, are there things this group wants to move forward with or not? I think we just need to rule those in and out and then define what it is that this group is going to be moving forward. We know that there's a Hispanic commission. They've got pretty specific agenda items that they work through on a regular basis. They have a conference, I don't know if it's annually or not, but it's one where they engage on policy and have specific speakers there to speak to issues in that community. So, you know, there's a lot in our community that we have to address, and I would love to have a discussion on how we think we can be most effective. For example, there are multiple ways that you can file a discrimination claim in Delaware, and there are probably 4 different agencies that take those complaints. Like, I would like to see an effort to, you know, streamline and formalize a way, or just release to the public information on how you can go do something as simple as, you know, address discrimination in certain areas. So, like I said, I don't want to get issue specific, but there are things that I think that this group can have great influence on. I just think we need to think about what areas those are and the specific role of this group. I don't think it can be, you know, I don't know if it's a strategic planning session or a you know, a needs analysis or focus groups across the state. I'm not sure how you get to that information, but I think those would be helpful exercises to broaden the conversation just beyond the members on this group.
Good, good. Thank you for your feedback. Appreciate it. Anything else? I just think that I appreciate us having an opportunity to have what we often say, a good old family conversation about how we can tweak, recalibrate, refocus our efforts, and to understand what our parameters are. And as many of us have shared this morning, that to kind of find a way, the mechanism to prioritize our work and to be able to do it in the most focused and meaningful manner. So I'm more encouraged today by our conversation than when I came in. And I think we have the right ingredients for this stew. And I think we can get it done. And I think we have to remind ourselves that the work that we're engaged in, it's mammoth. And it wasn't put on our shoulders, anybody else's shoulders in a day. And we just have to be smart, strategic, and have realistic expectations about how we can go at it. And I think we can and will make a difference. Yes, sir.
What can we do or plan to do today
oh, go ahead, Ms. Jane.
One of the things that the Secretary of Public said is that, and which I thought was very pertinent, is the fact that we need to determine what's most important. What issue of all the recommendations that were given to the task force and in all the committees. In each committee, there is probably one issue that's paramount to everybody. And she chose discrimination. And I thought about it when she said there are 4 agencies. But agency passes it on to another person. And so what we aren't hearing from those individuals who are having the problem. We're here at this table, but there are things happening in our community that we're not aware of. You might know about one incident and someone else, but the fact of us not being able to bring all these issues, us not having brought these issues to the table, we're not addressing some of these things. Go ahead, I'm sorry, ma'am.
No, if I may, what I'm thinking that what we can do today going forward, there are several different agencies that are represented on the Racial Equity Consortium, as well as community leaders. I think if we can identify an area in our purview that is important, that you may see there's a gap, a barrier, something that you want addressed by the full Racial Equity Consortium, we can do that. It can be something that has been recommended through the African American Task Force or something different. For example, two examples, I know that there's a member of the Racial Equity Consortium who wants us as a body to look more into reparations. What does that look like for the state of Delaware? Can we model what's done in the city of Wilmington, whatnot? And then another member wants us to focus on or look at affirmative action. That's just not in education, but it's in hiring. What does that look like now? How does it look like for Delaware with the dismantling of DEI programs? So there are ways, while it's not specifically mentioned in the African American Task Force, these are some great issues that we can look at and discuss through the Racial Equity Consortium, and that may give us more direction going forward. I still would like for us to report out where we are now with the recommendations. And then there would be some, for example, for the infrastructure and environment, a bill was introduced that really hit on all of those recommendations. However, it did not move out of committee in this last general session. So something that the committee can do is say, we encourage this reintroduction of this particular legislation, and then find partners so we can have a coalition of those who are interested in environmental issues, say, yes, we want X, Y, Z coming in the future. That's something easy. I mean, not easy, but writing letters, attending meetings, whether it's me or someone in our committee, we can do that. But I just want us to look at the need and see how best we can meet that need or find a solution.
But I think a takeaway that we have to agree upon is that we're going to try to get that focus and limit and not be all over the world. But I think I've heard that from different people, different ways, and my own voice saying that. I think that has to be one of the takeaways to one of the things that we have to agree upon, that's going to be an approach that we pursue, that we identify those areas, if it's 3, if it's whatever, and then we focus on it. Because I just believe that from a capacity standpoint, we don't, as we currently constructed, we don't have the capacity to do all things at the same time. Yes.
So my point was that I don't want to have to come to the next meeting, we have the same conversation.
Right, but we're not.
So even if we come to at least one consensus, even if it's just one consensus today, it's something we could work on to have prepared for the next meeting. That was my point in asking that question.
I took your question in a different direction. So I think one of the takeaways that we should have is that the expectation should be that whatever committee is operational, that they should be prepared to give us an update, whatever it is. We didn't meet, you know, these are the things, these are the things that we've identified as things, topics, focus, things that we like to look at. We like to run that by the body here to see if we're on the same page, or if there's something else that you might think is a better fit. I think if we can come back with that as one tangible thing that we need to do, that puts it in motion. Because I know, for example, the education committee, and I'm a part of it, I'm hoping that we're gonna meet a couple of times, start crafting out some work, and be able to come back on the 25th of September or whatever it is, and be able to articulate what we've been able to accomplish, and get some guidance from this group. Yes.
Just from everything I've heard, so what I think I'm hearing is that we want the subcommittees to create action plans.
Yes.
That come back up to the May 5 to create kind of what I hear the logic model.
Yeah. No, and that's a much better, you're phrased it far better than I. No, I mean, that's what it is, it's an action plan. What do you plan to do?
Right, so and it doesn't have to be complicated
No.
for each group. You guys use deliverables, so you want you guys to come up with short-term and long-term outcomes for each of the subcommittees. Who's gonna do what, the timeline, when it's gonna be done by.
Yep.
Again, not super complicated.
Yep.
It's gonna come to the main group, and the main group is gonna say, yes, you guys are going in the right direction, or no, maybe not the right direction,
Yep.
let's pivot. And then that will help create what our main goals are for the learning body. There is something that I feel like, so Wally said this in the last meeting, and it got brought up, but this was also said in the last meeting. I know we're not really talking about the past, but I thought this was a good idea. Focusing on the ones that we can do really well, and maybe not every single one.
Right. So
Because we do have a capacity issue,
Right.
and maybe an attendance thing, but then also looking at legislation at each of the meetings, whether it's the subcommittee meetings or the big meetings, because that is something we can actively do all the time. And coming up for this larger body, coming up with a formal process of how we will do that, because I heard you guys mention it earlier. It's been on my mind, and I was like, I don't know if I should say something because I'm not a voting member. I know these.
No, but your comments are very pertinent, and I would just take it a step further. And I look at it in this terminology, that there's a lot of low hanging fruit.
I was getting ready to say it.
I mean, I know we always use that phrase, it's probably overused, but I think it's appropriate for us to. There are things that are there that we can look at, but I think to your point. The education committee can say, oh, well, here are some things we've looked at. I mean, looking at whether it's low hanging fruit or whatever it is, and have a part of the action plan and be able to discuss that in this forum.
And I was gonna say, instead of the sewer being the one that brings the legislation to the group, maybe it's the subcommittees that do it. And so that it's not necessarily in place,
Yeah.
she's already
Yeah.
doing so much.
Yeah, no, especially with the fact that we're
We should.
our capacity is not we're not working at full strength. So your point about that, as much as we can help. Yes, ma'am, you've been very patient.
Yeah, like to go towards capacity, if someone is interested in a subcommittee, how do they get connected to the subcommittee? And are there any guidelines as far as recommended?
At this point, we will take all recommendations. You can send your recommendations to me, or, well, I don't want to speak for the subcommittee chairs, because I don't know how they want to structure it. But if the information will come to me, I will disperse it to our subcommittee chairs and subcommittee members so that they can craft how they want their subcommittee to be to run. And I think that's probably the best thing to do right now. Once the subcommittee structure is a little more formalized, I'm not going to say it's not been formalized. We have been meeting. It just needs to be Improvement.
Right. No, but to that point, if I were serving in the chair's position, I'd want to have the latitude to be able to identify, again, I keep using my education, I'd want to be able to identify teachers, counselors, parents, current educators, current administrators, former, and have a wide range of folks on there. And I would think that if we've identified somebody as the chair, that we should give them the latitude to be able to do that. Now, if we know there's something interesting in somebody's background, I mean, that can be discussed offline and we can do that. But I think initially we should empower our chairs to be able to do that.
Yeah, if I may, a couple of things. I think that it's going to be really important for us to get chairs for all of these committees immediately, like today, because and I think Corey, I think Dr. Quell and Caitlin have all stepped up for 3 of the committees. So there's 3 committees that currently don't have chairs. So I think that today, if we can, we should volunteer respectfully people to be committee chairs, because I think that's what's necessary. So I'm going to offer myself up for the education subcommittee and not just talk about what needs to be done. I will offer myself up as the chair for that subcommittee.
So we're down to 2.
And so we're down to 2. And I think if we leave today with chairs in place, combined with the very important comment that was just made about deputizing that responsibility to come up with that, I forget the phraseology you used, but it was perfect. Dr. Freeman said it was too, about how, the work that they should be doing, making recommendations about what it is they're doing, how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it. Let them have that discussion and be able to report out. I think in between the next meeting, I think that, it doesn't need to wait, report that up to the chairs, get the chairs' feedback, and then perhaps refine it. So by the time we come back to the next meeting, we're sort of having something forward thinking. But I would recommend we consider that, and maybe, appointing someone who is on those other 2 committees, or even if that's a step too far, perhaps saying, look, we're going to approach someone to say specifically, not just will you volunteer, but will you serve as the chair of this subcommittee, so that it can move forward. Related to,
I would just add that if we can't get a chair for that committee has to be on hold until we do so. Because I think, the work is important, but I think if we have 4 that have chairs and they're engaged, then I think the train has to move. Now, that's not to suggest that we don't do everything in our power to try to get that 5th and 6th, but if for whatever reason we can't, the train has to move, and we're going to move it forward. That would be mine.
I think that that's right, because everyone has said in different ways, we can't do everything well, but what we can do, we should do, right? So I think that there was also some remarks about going back to the AATF recommendations. And I think that one of the things that we should do, or really would be helpful to us as the subcommittees are working through their work, is to go back to the recommendations that were part of their specific area. And what I'm very curious about as it relates to legislation is, there were some very clear recommendations about things that should happen in the earlier report. I would want to hear from, let's say, for instance, the Department of Corrections, or the Labor Department, if there are specific areas, specific recommendations that are within their purview, what are the low-hanging fruits, things to act on, or maybe there has been already action on certain things since the AATF report has come out, but where are the gaps, like legislatively, to move things forward? And there may be some challenges. Maybe say, look, these are very nice recommendations, but here's the practical side of being able to not move this forward. And I think then we can start to triage that as a group to say, okay, this is what the subject matter experts are saying, why policy can't be devised around this particular issue. And then we can, I think, again, triage and assess some of that. But I think that's kind of the order of operations of it, is sort of go back to what it was that the charges from the AETF said, look at that as a subcommittee, bring in the subject matter expert to help us figure out where there are gaps at. And a lot of that work, I think, happens outside of a meeting. I don't think that we're triaging in a meeting. That's subcommittee work. They're having discussions, and then someone is presenting to us at a meeting about what those gaps are with respect to what's been accomplished, what still remains to be accomplished, and why it can or cannot be done. And I think that that would be a great way to get some traction around the subcommittee efforts. And then last but not least, going back to the work that the young people are doing around engaging, I think they're going to need a lot of direction too, because again, I appreciate what they're doing, but my concern is that they're doing it without a lot of guidance because we frankly are not clear about what some of the priorities are. And I think that we need to again instruct them in a way that's helpful to them and also to our overall goal. What would that look like? I think perhaps there needs to be some type of ambassador at each of our universities and colleges for the rec. And what could they do? They could be responsible for convening a forum of students to talk about the AATF recommendations. Like, once we know where the gaps are, here's the policies. Maybe the young people can be involved in a discussion around what policies that they think should move forward and what the purported reasons why they can't be moved forward are, to really engage them in a way that I think is informative of our work. So it's not just sort of this broad pontificating about things that they think, but sort of mobilizing them in a way that moves our work forward. So those are all ideas that I think would help us kind of utilize that youthful energy in a way that's productive.
Good. I like that. Thanks. Thank you.
Sir,
Yes.
I have one more. What I wanted to do here, I heard you, Mr. Ford, you said something that was real nice back there. Why don't we enter a motion, your committee, your people, your voting members, enter a motion to appoint those chair heads? You'll just move a motion on the floor to appoint those people. So it's on the record that you're going to look at appointing whomever it might be as committee chair heads. I mean, I don't know if you could carry a motion to do that. Would that spearhead, or would it start things?
We currently have 4, with Wally adding on to education. So right now we need a chairman for economic development and infrastructure and environment.
Right, but I think Wally said you could approach them and maybe ask some of those persons if they would take the positions. So I mean, could you move a motion, put a motion forward to create the structure?
Do we have a person to approach?
Right, exactly.
It sounds like these are areas that require some knowledge, some expertise.
And then Wally, what he also influenced is that you start small. We don't have the capacity. Doctor, you said the same thing. So you pick 3 of those key components and you work with those 3 areas. And you appoint people to those 3 areas, and from that right there, you continue to move forward.
I think what we could do, it's kind of a hybrid of what you're saying, is that we could formally vote on approving the 4 existing
Yes, sir.
committee chairs.
Exactly.
And then we could identify that we have 2 vacancies. And then that information gets sent out and we can reach out and see. And based on that, we know, and based on what we've discussed this morning, we know at leaving this meeting that we're gonna have 4 active committees. Now, we could end up having 6, things happen. But we know leaving here, at the very least, we're gonna have the 4 committees that have chairs. And they obviously will be meeting and coming back with information and we can support. So that really answers your original point. What are our next steps? I think those are our next steps.
Mr. Scott?
Yes, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, so if it helps the process, I'd be happy to volunteer to lead the Infrastructure and Environment Committee. You know, when we met, it was only a slew of myself, so others didn't have a chance to chime in as to whether or not they'd like to lead the committee. So give people the space to do that. But there's a caveat. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Thank you.
Okay. But the caveat is I don't have the bandwidth to be a one-man band.
Yeah.
So, I'll try to get that process started and gather the members of the committee. And if it looks like, it will be a one-band kind of deal, I'll come back to this committee to say, hey, guys, the interest isn't there. We can't get enough engagement. So this is why maybe we need to sideline until we can, get the resources to do a better job with it.
Yeah. Mr. Scott, that's more than fair. I think that's the approach that we'll take. So we're up to 5, and I think, Mr. Scott, you brought a valuable point that any committee could come back and say, after going back, we're not really ready to really move forward. We put it on hold. So we're looking at getting some kind of clarity at our September meeting. Yes.
Can you ask for these 2 committees, what would be involved? In other words, actually, I might have some expertise in that area or some knowledge in that area that I don't know I have, but I don't understand what the committee is actually planning or doing, or the end result that they might be trying to reach. So if he were to describe what his expectations are as far as being part of the committee, then some of those who are out here might find it as something they want to do, as opposed to just having the title.
Right.
Infrastructure doesn't reach me right now.
Right, but I think part of what we have, I think the latitude that we need to give our committee chair is to be able to, if there are people there to kind of really fine tune that. Because I think, we can sit here and try to come up with all different directions, but I think if we empower our committee chairs to be able to look at the area, looking at obviously the recommendations, but also what to me, which is equally important, what's going on now. But the current challenges in those respective areas, and to be able to identify a path forward so that we can look at low-hanging fruit, we can look at things that need to be done and set our sights on that. So I would just say that we need to allow the 5 committee chairs to be able to identify a path in that area along with the participants, and then come back. And then if we need to adjust it, we'll be able to do that in September.
Yeah, I mean, even if they came up with it and we can send it out so that they might come September, I can go, okay, this is something I think I'd like.
Right. And that's true. I mean, it's something Wally made a great point that individual committees don't have to wait till September.
Right.
They can send the information to our executive director, they can CC Jane and CC me, and we can get that information out to people. Okay? But I think the key takeaway from today, the real important work doesn't happen at this level, happens at the committee level. We're a governance body, and we're going to help to try to keep the train moving in the right direction. And as I said before, I'm feeling better about where we are, and I'm very confident that as we continue to tweak this train, we're going to get it right. Other comments before we? Before, I'm sorry, was remiss. We do need a motion to approve our committees. After anything, we're going to do it for them. Yes, that's before the motion.
Voting members and then ex officio. So we can't vote. Don't you want to get quorum to vote?
There's 1, 2, 3.
4 is ex officio.
2, 1, 2. Oh, 5.
Yeah,
1, 2. There are 5, and I think there are 13. So we probably we don't have a.
Okay. Okay, so I never started with before. So here's what we're gonna do. So unofficially, we're going to move forward with this effort, and all the committees, the 5 committees that we've identified, they are empowered to meet. We will come back in our September meeting when we have a quorum and we'll vote formally. But the work has to move on. So for example, I'm part of Wally's team. I'm gonna be with Wally when he sends out a meeting notice at the education committee's meeting. I'm gonna be right there with him along with the other people. We're gonna work. And everybody else can mirror that. And then we can come back and formalize what we need to formalize. But yes, we can vote on it, but we can't start to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just don't want us to get.
No, thank you so much for doing that.
Dr. can we just table it? Maybe we say we table it to your next communication, then your next communication will be voting on it.
Well, we're gonna go,
I'm sorry. That's what we're talking about. I'm sorry. No. We were discussing, that a communication will go out.
Yes.
Right.
Right, communication, not necessarily the minutes for this meeting,
Yes.
but to let everyone know that the voting members need to be present at meetings. However, since we have to move forward, we'll come up with a mechanism for the voting members to vote via email
Thank you. Perfect.
so that we can get the work done.
Yes, ma'am.
Because in all candor, whether we were voting or not, we're gonna start working.
And those chairs, those chairs, if you have something that you want to focus on, you have a particular issue that you want to focus on, get the communication out to the members of the committee. So Mr. Scott, if you have a particular path in which you would wish to go, let the chair, let our executive chair know, and then she can get it out to other people, because there may be someone else who's interested in being a part of that committee.
Because we've made some really great strides today, and we can't let the momentum of these strides go by the wayside. So that's why I keep emphasizing committee work, whether it's formalized or not, it has to start.
Correct.
You gotta do it.
Gotta get it done.
Gotta get it done.
So to quickly summarize what our tasks are, there are 3 things that I need. First, when the email comes out regarding the report, I would like everyone to read over and critically look at and see where we can make edits, changes, whatever. Please do that. That's number 1. 2, we will send out a Google form to get everyone's correct email addresses, their addresses, whatnot, so we can make sure that we have that information. We had been working on a directory. As you know, there are now 2 people, so we're starting over. We are literally starting over. So we want to make sure we have a directory of not just our members voting and non-members, but those who have come, the alternates who come to these meetings, who are providing feedback, so we have that information. And third, for the subcommittee people, not only the chairs, but everyone who's involved in the subcommittee subcommittee members, to read over the African American Task Force, those recommendations, identify where there are any gaps or barriers, and something that you know about in your prospective work, where we need to have some type of information regarding what we need to do in terms of moving forward. I, on my end, will send out a little summary of what the subcommittee structure should look like, and do's and don'ts, responsibilities, duties, and some of the deliverables and the timeline. Because I know we don't have our next full meeting for September, so that gives you a good month and a half to do some work. So that's where we are. Any other thoughts on what we should do?
So I just real quick about that, I think is really important, because you've been leading the charge on the subcommittees diligently since this work began. As this is reshaping itself, I would hope that you would not feel the pressure of being on every single because I could see a situation where people are scheduling these calls not in a way that is conducive to your schedule all the time. And I don't want, unless there's a reason it needs to be the case, that you feel this obligation or pressure to be always on each subcommittee call, particularly if they're doing it at a higher tick than once in between meetings. So I don't know if there's some legislative requirement that has this be an open meeting or something that I'm unaware of. Hopefully it's not. But I would suggest that obviously you are constantly put in the loop, that you are, you know, your consideration for your availability is taken into account, but that whoever leads the committee and the committee itself be responsible for drafting minutes and perhaps consulting with you and our co-chairs in some other way to make sure you're informed, but not necessarily requiring you to be on those calls, because I think the scheduling may be sporadic based on the availability of folks who are on the subcommittee.
I 100% agree.
Well, that was, yeah, and I would second that. That was a great point, Wally, that if the committee chair can just, and I emphasize, a brief summary or minutes, just brief, because we understand, you know, and that can be submitted, and that way we'll all stay up to date. And to your point, executive director doesn't have to feel like she has to be 6 places, 6 different times. And if there's a special time when a committee would like to have a chair there, I mean, just let me know. I mean, I would make myself available. I'm working on the premise that the people that are our chairs are people that have a lot of experience and are going to be the kind of leaders that we need. And when they need help and assistance, they'll reach out to us, and we'll obviously be there when need be.
So I don't have anything else if no one else does. I just want to, again, thank everyone who has been a part of this conversation and a part of the Racial Equity Consortium. It has been a wonderful experience while trying it sometimes because of just the vast amount of information and responsibilities that we have to do. We don't take it lightly, the responsibility that we have, especially dealing with what members of the African American community have to deal with on a daily basis, and what we are trying to do to make it better for those here in the state. So I do thank you for your commitment, your dedication, your passion, and I am optimistic as we move forward that we will see a brighter future and really hone in on what we're supposed to be doing. So thank you very much.
I would just like to add just a gigantic thank you for your participation today, the important dialogue that we had, and the way that we were able to collectively chart out a better course for us. So thank you, everybody, in person and on Zoom as well. Yes, ma'am.
This might not be as necessary, but I don't know if y'all did your approval of last month's minutes and everything.
We did not, so I was just going to hold it for the next meeting to approve both at the same time.
Yeah, because the conversation was so important, we just decided we were going to deviate from that agenda just a little bit.
Thank you.
And then, exactly, we still have a course, we couldn't vote on anything. Okay, I think, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you all. Take care.
Stay dry.
Stay dry. Corey, good luck with the rehab stuff.
Are you heading down there, Mr.?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, all right.
Thank you.
Thank
Yep,
you all.
take care.
All right, take care.
Jeannie Bartlett and Brooke.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, it's all right.
What you think?
You're gonna see that.
Yeah, 4 to 8.
Like a church, we gotta have that church.